So I had a pleasure of getting a Skype message from Reb Yaakov Kronenberg. One of his children came across the Tikkun elevator Kollel. They live in Eretz Yisrael, and he found out that I was saying shiurim from the Jewish Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Rabbi Yaakov Kronenberg. He's not a rabbi, excuse me. So here he comes now. We're really getting into some serious Kabbalah mixed astrology now. Basic Kabbalah is that there is the worlds of the Ein Sof, which is beyond our ability to understand. It becomes more solidified, let's say, and templated in the concept of Adam Kadmon, and all of this is very deep stuff that can be learned, and we learn about it as much as as knowable. Then there's the world of emanation, which is called Atzilus. Atzilus means near the nothingness of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Very close to that, but it's also much more formed. Then you come to the world of creation, which is called Bria, the world of formation, and there's called Yetzirah. This is basic Kabbalah. But what we're really all going for is this one down here. It's called the earth. Another word for this is Malchus. So in order to get the earth, you go through 7 heavens. And that's the discussion that Rabbi Yaakov is into right now. Now, understanding this is not necessarily so easy, so we're going to go a little bit slower, try to keep going back and forth, and try to zero in on what he's saying. Now, he says, so why do we talk so much about this palace of Rakia, Yesod, and the lower Vilon Malchus, and not the higher ones? Why do we talk about the lower worlds of transmission? Why do we talk about the lower levels of what is closest to Earth? This is because the Earth always gets much more energy sent down from the lower worlds than from the higher ones. Most energy from above is brought down by the 2 lowest palaces, which are the first and the second, to Earth, because they are the roots of this world. Now, many astrologers are not automatically led to the obvious conclusion of God's omniscience and involvement in our world and our lives. It is possible to read book after book and see that astrologers ask themselves, how do all these planets, stars, and all the astrology reveal the truth that they do? How do they come about? They come up with all sorts of theories except the most obvious, which is at the root of Torah astrology, which is that it is God who does this. For example, Carl Jung, famous psychologist, he's actually a psychiatrist. He was a disciple of Sigmund Freud. A famous psychologist gives the idea of synchronicity, which I really don't understand, but it is not addressing the main issue of God and his involvement in our world. Other people have their own theories as to why astrology works. But according to Judaism, it is not really a question, it's a given that God created and runs the world. And he chose to run it through this intricate model of the universe, where he doesn't send things down directly to people unless he chooses to do so. He says, so the next question is, why did God create the world this way? Where he doesn't directly provide things to people, instead makes it to go via many worlds before we get it, and before that is the chef of the bracha, the bounty, whatever it is going to come to us. The basic answer to this is that due to the sin of the first man, Adam, the delivery system was changed. God saw that people would not be able to receive things directly from him. It would be too much for them so he created messengers. It works like governments work, where there is a king who has ministers and different agents and messengers. A farmer knows about the king only from the state senator, who knows the governor, who would eventually get to the king. So the same way God created the astrological system to gradually reveal his light through a hierarchy of the human, for the human to slowly and gradually receive it. In the same way, symbolically, humans could see what was somehow close to them And then gradually, by building telescopes, they discovered galaxy after galaxy and become able to see more worlds. So astrology connects you to the upper worlds and to God. And on the other hand, it can be used by people only for their own benefits and drag them down. Today, many people use astrology to become rich, have more power, instead of using it as a ladder up to the higher worlds. In Jewish astrology, our goal is not to cut off any powers which came down from their sources and use them for our own benefit. God forbid. One reason that it makes no sense to do this, since astrology and the planets are in fact the final stage of a long journey of light, starting much higher up in the upper worlds. It's my world of light, my word. So, which zodiac technique is preferable? Now, first of all, I don't understand this. One is called the tropical, and the other one is sidereal system. So, why he says these things, these different things that Rabbi Yaakov says, then there's a lot of discussion that takes us into different places. Let's see what he says now. One of the main arguments against astrology is that when referred to the eighth Gilgal sphere as the fixed stars, for example, the zodiac, this is not a very accurate name, since the fixed stars do move, in fact. So that was one of the ideas, was that the stars, I think that was the sidereal system. The stars are actually moving. They're not fixed. But this is not a good criticism, since our sages knew about this movement, but also knew that they move very slowly and are really more or less fixed stars in our lifetime. Understand that there's not going to be any movement that we're going to be able to perceive unless we lived hundreds of years. When a person looks at the stars, they seem to stay at one place, but over 70 years or so, it will be obvious that they have moved. They move a degree over about over every 72 years. So after a couple of thousand years, they would move about 20 or 30 degrees. So there are basically two models that address this issue. One model is taking into account the movement of the stars and calculating the zodiac. And this is mainly used in Indian or Hindu astrology. And according to them, the planets and sun are about 24 degrees earlier than in Western astrology. So they have a different time system, because they take into account the movement of the stars. Now, how they do that, I don't understand, but that's what he said. So we have a concept about the movement of the stars as having to do with an effect on us. But in Western astrology, the tropical zodiac, which uses the tropical zodiac, is underlined by a different system, which is based on the 4 seasons and the sun. This is calculated by the 2 times when the days, that is the night and day, are equal in hours, which takes place in when is April, and I guess it would be in September. This is the April and September equinox. And when the day is the shortest and when it is the longest, which would be December 21st or June 21st. So he is the longest compared to the night. This is called the vernal equinox, etc. So that means it is calculated according to what degree the sun is in. Move this over here a little bit. So this is a major argument in astrology, which is the correct method. Now let me see, we have a few minutes, but I don't think I'll get through the whole thing, but I'll read a little bit, and if I can, I can. I would like to quote 2 Torah books that deal with this subject. One book is Sefer Hatzechuna, written by Rabbi Chaim Vital. Now, I'm not sure, Hatechuna. No, I don't know exactly I'm pronouncing that right, because it's not actually written in Hebrew. And the second is in Migdalos, written by Rabbi Yavitz. In Judaism, which we just heard Rabbi Yavitz over there in Rabbi Memra. In Judaism, there is a problem if you go according to the sidereal, which is the zodiac system, because Pesach has to fall in springtime, and it must fall in the month of Nisan. If you take the movement of the stars into account, I think in the last couple of years, it moved out of the springtime. So Rabbi Chaim Vital deals with this in Sefer Hatechuna, and he mentions that when the world was created, the 8th and the 9th Galgalim, Chochmah and Bina, were exactly parallel to each other. They were in perfect sync. The starting point of each one was 0 degrees, Aries, and every 30 degrees there was a new constellation, Taurus, Gemini, etc., until there was 360-degree sphere. So that is how it was engraved in the 9th Galgal sphere, and that is also why it was possible to see what was in the 9th, because it was projected in the lower 8th Galgal. Now this we will have to examine again tomorrow and start over at the top again, because this looks like it's a little bit more deep. Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun Elevator Kollel, Jewish Astrology, a Cosmic Science.